this video, I'm going to discuss how Descartes might reply to Hume's skeptical argument at causal beliefs from section 4 of an inquiry concerning human understanding. In the last few videos, we've looked at Hume's argument from section 4, and that argument attempted to establish that all conclusions concerning matters of fact are not founded on reason, either intuitive, demonstrative, or probable. And in order to establish this conclusion, there were 3 steps to Hume's argument. So first, he established that all conclusions concerning matters of fact are founded on the relation of cause and effect. Then he established all cause and effect. Showed that conclusions are not founded. How cause and see and about what Descartes might hear. Against the demonstrative certainty of the future resembles the past. Remember, future thought was it a fact about the world? It's the way the world is that the future resembles the past. Not a fact about the world that one sees, because it's not about the present, or not only about the present, and it's not a fact that one can remember because it's not solely about the past, right? It's also about the future. And so the only way you can know something about the future, about what will take place in the future, is through an inference, is through immediate matter, knowledge of immediate matter of fact. And so how could Descartes reply? Well, if he were to reject that the future resembles the past is known through experience, right? So Hume maintains the future resembles the past is founded on experience, right? And the reason for that was, well, we had to have had past experience, Hume thought, of the futures resembling the past in the past in order to establish that the future continues to resemble the past right now, right? So we had this past experience of the future resembles the past, and then we had the present belief that the future resembles the past. And the present belief was founded on the past experience, and Hume thought, well, if the present belief is founded on the past experience, how is the past experience connected up with the present belief? Well, it's got to be via the principle that the future resembles the past. But that was circular, right? So Hume argued that then reasons in a circle. You're presupposing that the future resembles the past in arguing that the future resembles the past. And so if the future resembles the past, is founded on experience. So if Hume is right that we can only know that the future resembles the past by demonstrating it through experience, and so we can only engage in probable reasoning by first establishing the future resembles the past through experience, and that's going to be circular. Well, then we're stuck, right? Then Hume is right. We can only demonstrate the future resembles the past by presuming it. But what if that was wrong, right? So what if Descartes could reject that the future resembles the past is established through experience? Well, if he could reject that the future resembles the past was established through experience and establish it in some other way, right? Well, then he would have his premises, right? Because they would need for probable reasoning, because probable reasoning depends on past experience and the future resembles the past, right? And with these two premises, you can infer from a present impression of a cause to a belief that soon the effect will come about. And so one strategy of Descartes might be to reject that the future resembles the past is founded on experience. Okay, but given that Descartes rejects this, how could he argue that we know the future resembles the past? Well, perhaps we have a strong, even irresistible tendency to believe that the future resembles the past, or that there's uniformity in nature. And so if God's not a deceiver, and we have this strong, irresistible tendency to believe that the future resembles the past, and no way of figuring out that the future doesn't resemble the past, well, then if God's not a deceiver, we can't be wrong in this natural tendency. The future must, in fact, resemble the past. And that would mean that nature is uniform and the future resembles the past. So how could Descartes argue that the future resembles the past? Well, what if the future resembles the past is grounded in an innate propensity to believe that the future resembles the past, put there by God into our reason? Well, that would do the trick, right? So if we could establish the reason that the future resembles the past and not have that grounded on past experience, well, then we would have our premise, right? And we would be able to know, given, say, my impression of drinking water and my past experience in the past, when I drank water, my thirst was quenched, and that the future resembles the past, then I could know demonstratively, on the basis of that past experience and my knowledge of the future resembles the past, that soon my thirst would be quenched. And so there I would be able to have a bit of reasoning if I could establish the future resembles the past. Okay, what would you say in response? Well, what about this? What if Hume asked Descartes, well, how have you established the existence of this non-deceiving God? I mean, what kind of What branch of human knowledge does it belong to? I mean, is it a mere relation of ideas? Well, no. I mean, it concerns the existence of this non-deceiving God. And existence is a matter of fact. Because it's a fact about existence, and you don't know it through your present sensations or what you remember having sensed, to show this matter of fact, which isn't present to your senses or memory, you're going to need a causal argument. That's, after all, what we saw up here. But to make causal argument, you have to appeal to experience and the principle that the future resembles the past. So you can't base your claim that the future resembles the past on the existence of this non-deceiving God. I have to prove the existence of a non-deceiving God requires, now we can see, belief in the future resembling the past. So what would Hume's rebuttal be? Well, it would be God's existence concerns existence and so as a matter of fact. Furthermore, it is not sensed or remembered. So, it depends on a causal argument. But that requires knowing that the future resembles the past. Okay. So what could Descartes say in reply to this rebuttal of Hume's? How could Descartes reply? You might take a minute, think about it. Well, Descartes might say, but Hume, you just assume that all matters of fact have to come down to experience and impressions. I've shown you through my meditations that there are some matters of fact that we can know without being able to trace their ideas back to impressions and experience. For example, without being able to trace this idea of God's existence back to any kind of sensation or experience. And so there's a counterexample to your copy principle. And the future resembles the past. Maybe the future resembles the past is something you know about the world, something you know about matters of fact. You don't learn or experience, but instead know through reason. It exists through reason. Okay, so that's a little bit about how the back and forth might go. Let me write out that last part, right? So, so D might say, well, Hume, you assume or better than known through the senses or experience, traceable back to, right? Because it's the copy principle that's in question. Right. So Descartes might say, well, you assume that matters of fact are traceable back to impressions or experience in your copy principle. But when I prove God's existence in meditation 3, I showed you by the natural light why God must exist. If you'd understood that proof, then here is an example of something that must exist that's not traceable back to impressions or experience. Now, we could go on from here and ask, well, what would Hume say? And he does have a reply. His reply would go back to his objection to Plato's argument for the immortality of the soul. He would claim existence property, like being read, right? Existence that can be predicated of something essentially, like evenness is predicated of 2, and so on. Right, and remember, Descartes' proof depended on a being more perfect if it exists than if it doesn't exist. And since God was the idea of God was the idea of the most perfect being, it's more perfect for a being to exist than not to exist, so God exists. And so that hinged on existence being a property or a predicate that like red or brown or being wise or, etc. Right? And so Hume could reject this presumption of Descartes' argument that existence is a predicate. But we'll stop it. We'll stop things here. In the next video, I'm going to turn to sections 5, 6, and 7, and Hume's positive account of our causal belief.